I, you know, I feel so completely misunderstood, in this stupid little situation, which is just, I've been, ultimately accused of dunking on like Ryan Upchurch out of, sheer jealousy for what he has and his success, and I just wanted to get, one thing off my chest personally, which is just the girls that are throwing themselves after him and who he's dated in his past are not really my type, and I am ultimately guilty of being, attracted, I guess, somewhat to women that can teach me things that I don't already know, and being something of a xenophile who's attracted to foreigners for, the cultural exchange and whatnot that, takes place between the two of them, because American society is just too familiar, and I know too much about it, to such an extent that I just, it doesn't really interest me nearly as much as, the foreign world, because I am, ultimately of American origin myself, and, from the United States. So, there's definitely that level of tension and attraction towards, people that aren't ultimately from the United States. And, of Katie Knoll, it's not really her fault. I mean, you don't get to choose where you were ultimately born, and she's just basically making the best of what her hand in life dealt her. But she's just not ultimately all that appealing at that kind of level. And I have a lot of these girls that are huge adoring fans of Ryan Upchurch now. Not really. Like what I think about them and the ones that shit talk me for attacking him is that they're groupies who are just being like, notice me senpai for, and they're attacking and criticizing me because of the fact that you know, they ultimately want senpai to notice them, and that's how it comes across. You think that through lowering my position that he'll notice you, and I'm just like, ugh. But if you run across on this particular platform somebody that invades other people's music videos and trash talks them, or somebody that comes and says something nasty about a musician, you should probably, instead of accusing them of clout chasing, ask them why they don't like them, or what their rationale for shit talking them in the first place ultimately is, and why they're so pissed at that particular artist, because that it is a genre that's ultimately just there for people to enjoy. So like, what is it that drives a person to ultimately hate a breakout success artist, if it isn't ultimately jealousy that drives it, which is basically what I was accused of and hit with. And the truth of the matter is that what animates my dislike for this particular guy and artist isn't so much his, I don't know, like, I don't like his music and whatnot, but is that really a topic that's worthy of making and producing a video essay about, or a of coming up here on the platform and basically saying your piece about them? I don't know. It isn't, but my focus musically has been for the past couple of years on trying to basically unearth a lot of very underrated artists, and unfortunately, the experience of that and unearthing a lot of them has been one that's left me wondering why the hell these acts are as underrated as they actually are, and why they haven't ultimately received the recognition that they truly earned and deserved, whereas undeserving ass clowns that are completely talentless like Upchuck are getting far more attention than they've actually earned. And uh, I feel of Upchurch like it's completely overrated, and I don't get it. I don't resonate with his particular fandom, and those that ultimately think that I'm chasing after his clout, or you're so full of like arrogance and like you honestly think that like I want you ultimately as my follower or that I'm jealous of what he has, but this is so stupid. It's I think that what animates my anger is just how underrated criminally a lot of these acts ultimately are, and the fact that the spotlight is being shined on some country music singer that his genre has been in the spotlight for the past fucking like fucking 100 fucking years in America, and is not really doing anything that's new and interesting in any kind of way, and on top of all that is just like not even all that good of a singer or anything, and yet he's being called talented. Like what? I don't get it. I don't share your point of view. I think of him as an overrated, talentless ass clown. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just how I see it. But in the meantime, I think that what's getting away from us is just and getting away from the discussion is just how underrated a lot of these artists happen to be, and so I don't have a giant platform myself, but I do have a voice, at least somewhat. So I thought I would, take a moment, out of my day, ultimately, to point you in the direction of somebody that I feel is not getting, the recognition that she's honestly earned. And the fact of the matter is that this particular artist, I think that she doesn't really. I suspect that to a huge extent, she thinks that it's some kind of ghost that made the art that she's produced, but it was her authentically. And I think that she probably has imposter syndrome ultimately about a lot of it, but she is. And has authentically fucking taken my breath away with a lot of the music that she's produced. The last time I remember having those kind of goosebump emotions about something was literally, and somebody so consistently doing it was likely with Christopher Hall of Stabbing Westward, who, y- you know, she's in a completely different genre than, she doesn't produce music that sounds anything like Stabbing Westward. So, my tastes are ultimately eclectic, but Christopher Hall had a way ultimately of producing stuff that just completely knocked my socks off. And Darkest Days is probably one of my all-time favorite albums. And it did become a chart-topping success, but I still kind of feel like it was, it did ultimately at least broach the mainstream. But I definitely do feel like it should have been a little bit more popular than it ultimately end up being, and that's sad for it. It was an incredible album, and it really touched it. It really brought a lot into the mainstream that hadn't ultimately been there. And while it was a bit of a mindfuck moment to see like Trent Reznor up there on main stage with Justin Timberlake and whatnot, I mean that was quite the experience, to say the least. This artist in particular, her name is Sarah Howells, and her work is so underrated it ought to be a crime. So if there is ultimately like jealousy, it's not jealousy of what he has that I want for myself. It's more like jealousy by proxy for what he has that I think other people ultimately deserve, that they didn't get, and the recognition that they didn't ultimately get. So, you know, um, in the spirit of doing something or a little bit more of an upbeat video, and it's something that's a little bit more, I'm grateful to an artist, and to end on a little bit more of a positive, about all this and this drama. I mean, there's a reason why I feel the way that I do about this, and why I don't like him, and this is probably the biggest chunk of it. It's just that there's so much that didn't get the kind of recognition that he's getting that deserved it. So, my hat's off to Sarah, Sarah Howells, who I will definitely put some stuff that she's produced, in the underbar for.